Hey guys, it's Andrew from Collective Intelligence, and lately I've been learning a couple more advanced techniques inside of Ableton Live, so I thought I would make a video to show you guys what Ableton can do. There's a couple of cool features in here that you may not have seen before, so let's jump into it. Tip number one, if you're like me and you sometimes arrange your tracks with like an individual sample just spammed out across the entire project like this one, audio sample that is, there's a way that you can quickly replace this. So if the idea of putting a new kick drum in your track is overwhelming, but it needs a new kick drum, there's a simple step to do it, right? And many people say you can't do this in Ableton. You can. This is how you do it. So first we want to go File. We want to go Manage Files, and we want to go Manage Set. We want to go View Files, and then we want to navigate to where the sample is, right? Now, bearing in mind, we can look at the name that we've given it, but the actual sample name is written here. So just make sure you're getting the right sample name. So we've got Mind Mirror Master Kick. Let's navigate and find it. Okay, so here's the kick drum. We can actually enable the hot swap, and we can scroll through and we can select a different sample. So in this case, I'm going to select this kick drum. So I'm going to double click it. And here we are, we've replaced the kick drum. And now if we listen to it, different kick. And it's placed perfectly where the other kick was. That's tip number one. Tip number two is an advancement of this idea. So let's find an appropriate sample. Let's say that this snare drum is too open, and we would like to edit all of the snare drums rather than individually going in, cutting it, and then pulling a volume envelope across it. There's a way to do that as well. So let's navigate in the file section window that I just used before, and let's find the snare, right? Here's the snare. If I click Edit, look what happens. I'm opening up Adobe Audition, and here is my snare. And I can say that I want to put a fade on my snare, right? So in this case, yeah, let's do it like that. We want to tighten up the snare so it's tighter. I am going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and save it, and I'm going to go ahead and close it. And then I'm going to deselect Edit, and here is my edited file. Right, so I can do this by setting it up appropriately within the preferences. So I go Preferences, and then I go to File Folder, and then I see that there's a sample editor here. And I've navigated to my Adobe folder. You can use Audacity or any other free software that does audio editing. And this is great for if you've recorded a podcast and you don't have any noise removal software in Ableton, but you have Adobe Audition, or you have the Audacity. If you have the Audacity, you can pull it in there and you can use the noise removal, and then you can bring it back. It's so awesome. So you can do this with all sorts of editing. So this is an example of just, tightening the envelopes, because people always complain in Ableton that you don't have an easy way of like just selecting all of these and then deciding to pull them shorter, right? Well, now you have a way of doing that. Sure, it's not within the door, but it's a solution. So hopefully that's really useful for you guys. Let's go to the next tip. The next tip, I've got an instrument rack here, and I'm going to take one operator and two operators. The first operator is going to play on all oscillators. Oh, sorry, that's the second one, and it's going to sound like this. The first one's going to sound like this, right? So, key, what does it do? This allows us to set up zones on our keyboard so that we can designate note presses to go to particular instruments. So I've got two instruments. So here you can see the piano roll for -C all the way up to positive. I can right click and distribute the ranges equally, or I can manually come in here and I can grab things and I can say, I want the first operator to make sounds between when the keys are pressed between -C2 and -C1. right? Well, we'll make it bigger than that. It can go all the way up to C3, and then above C3, I just want the other one to play, right? So I'm pressing on my keyboard. I'm going to press high up on the keyboard. So you can go absolutely nuts with this sort of idea. You can put heaps of instruments in there, and you can have each different note of your melody actually triggering a different sound. You could do whatever you want. Next one is velocity. So the velocity is going to be able to do particular things as well. So depending on how hard I hit the keyboard, I can tell it to do particular things. So keep that in mind that you can do this. And if you don't know as well, then you've got the chain selector, and the chain selector is going to allow you to do certain things like, depending on where this play chain selector head is, if I've got that device covering that area and then that device covering that area, this instrument's going to play, and then that instrument's going to play. And I can right click on this and I can map it to a knob, right? That's the chain selector. So I can move that around and I can go really nutty with this sort of stuff. So if I go create chain, oh, whoops-a-daisy, create chain, and then if I right click on here and I go distribute ranges equally, and I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different versions of operator across all of this, and I can then be having MIDI playing or be playing the keyboard itself, and then depending on where the actual selector is will dictate what's happening. But just keep in mind that at the moment I'm using a combination of the key selection and the chain selection, so you can get really, really complex with what you're going to allow to play and what you're not going to allow to play, and this is interesting. So jump into it, check it out, see what cool things you can come up with using the instrument rack and key selection. You can access it from, an audio channel if you've got just a regular audio effect rack, right? So if we pull an audio filter in, we group it, we can come in here. We've got the chain, right? So we just got the chain when we're dealing with audio effects. When we're dealing with MIDI, we get velocity and we get key tracking as well. Check it. This one is gonna send ripples through space-time. So what if I told you if you wanted to make space in the arrangement, you could very simply use a hotkey. So for example, once upon a time, I would have copied the whole arrangement, gone copy, delete, and then I would have pasted it if I wanted to move it along there, right? Now what I can do is I can put my cursor here, I can go Control-I on my keyboard, and I can say I would like to insert 16 bars of time. And now I have 16 bars of time. What if I told you I could go back and I could select this area in time, and I could go up here, edit, and I could cut time. And I could paste the time over here. Boom, right? So you have cut time, paste time, duplicate time, and delete time. So use them. You can insert times into your timeline, and it's very straightforward for rearranging an arrangement. If you want to take this section, put it over there, take that section, put it over there. Happy days. Control-I to insert time will change your life. Another example would be what we got going on here. This is 1 bar of time, right? And I have 16 bars of time, or 32, sorry. So 32 bars of time, and then I put a little break in here, a 1 bar break. And then from this section onwards, the grid in Ableton would be off if I didn't do this little trick. So I've gone ahead and I've right-clicked and I've inserted a time signature change, and I've just set it to 4/4. So I'm not actually changing the time signature, but what that does is it resets the grid. So now when I'm selecting 4 bars, it's 4 bars from there, and this little 1 bar of time doesn't screw everything up. So if you don't understand what I mean, if I delete this, right now, that's one solid block. You can see because the gray grid, right? I don't want that because that 1 bar of time, we want to just ignore it. Let's pretend it doesn't exist from here onwards. And I want to be able to quickly just copy and paste stuff and have it all work on the grid. But if I select that period of time, that's actually just 15 bars. So I right click here, I insert time change, I make sure it's at the point that I want, so go ahead and put it there. And now the timeline is going to count properly from there onwards, right? So now that's 16 bars of time. If I did it with that, it's perfect, and this doesn't matter anymore. So even when I'm selecting before this point, that's just a 1 bar period of time. It doesn't matter. All of the other structure is still maintained. So there's another little tip for you to make things easier to arrange and keep tidy. Another tip, you're able to actually right-click on these sections and just say loop to next locator. And it's just going to loop that section that you've got 2 locators at. And if you don't actually know how to put a locator in there, just right-click there and go add locator, right? So right-click on the locator, loop to next locator. Or what I can do is I can go select to next locator, right? So I can select time. That's really handy. So you can also use these little arrows here to move your cursor to the next locator, right? And you can press delete to remove a locator, or you can press set to set one. Right, so there's some little features there that maybe so far you hadn't been using. So I've got this super complex drum pattern here, just to give you an example of this. Grab, hold, and click the kick, drag, and drop it. Boom. We've separated the 2 clips. Don't forget you can do that. You could make a really complex arrangement, right? You can have all this crap going on. Don't question the integrity of my drum beat. Drop that there. Oh shit, I didn't mean to do that. We go, you grab, drag. I need another MIDI clip. You go over there. Okay, now it's in this drum rack. It's over there, snares over there. Cool. We go. You can put them all on there in separate little journeys. Cool. And then what you can do, tip after that tip, is you can go shift and you can select them all. And you can come down here, and don't forget, you can now multi-edit clips. So now I'm editing that clip, and if I gave them different names, we'd know what the hell's what. Oh yeah, that one's 5, that one's 2, and that one's 1. Right, so when I've got it active and highlighted, I can draw on the timeline, and you'll see that it's putting notes on that particular clip. Go down this one, all right, this one needs a couple there and there. Oh yeah, sweet. And this one, oh, that one. Sweet, so don't forget, you can do all of these sweet things. The final thing I'm going to talk about isn't really a tip, but it's something that I learned recently that I thought I would share with you all, and that is modulation versus automation. And I feel like we all have a pretty good understanding of what they are, but if I actually asked you to tell me the difference between modulation and automation, maybe you would be a little bit like me, and I would look a little bit blankly and I'd say like, what? They're kind of the same thing, but they're not. So let's cover it. So I'm in the session view here.
Cliff is a roofer.
We can F with him all day.
Cliff is highly confused.
Confused and no.
I got a sample that's playing, and I got a filter on the channel. So first, I will describe and showcase what automation is, and you probably already know, so just skip a little bit ahead, but the explanation is complete with this and then that, so maybe watch this just to make sure that you really do know what automation is. So automation is telling the parameter, right? And in this case, we're going auto filter and we're going frequency. And we're inside the clip here, by the way. We're inside the envelope of that clip. So when we're on the session view, this is how we have to do automation as well as modulation. When we're on the arrangement view, we only do modulation inside the clip envelope. We do automation on the timeline, and we'll look at that as well. So right now, we're automating from 188 hertz to 19.9 kilohertz. And at every point from this first bar to the end of the 4th bar, the cutoff filter knows exactly where it should be in time. Exactly. It has a value that it's given. So when it's here, it's 670, right? When here, it's 1.25. It knows exactly where to go. So then if I press play, and we watch the controls.
Let's challenge his shattered view of the world.
straightforward, right?
Cliff is highly confused.
We can see the journey it's taking. So what we'll do now is we'll come back, back into the clip, right click, and clear all the envelopes. So no more automation. Now let's flick over to modulation. And now we've got a blue line. And it's a percentage line. And that could start giving it away. What is it? So we can go positive 50%, or we could go negative 50%. But what does that do? So in order to try and understand, I'll give an explanation first, and then we'll look at what it's doing to the controls. And then we'll combine automation and modulation together to get the full picture. So what modulation is, as opposed to automation, which was an exact value, what modulation is saying, I am going to have influence over the frequency cutoff of the filter, positive 50% or negative 50% of whatever value it happens to be. And I don't care what value it's at. I'm going to try and go and move the control positive 50% or negative 50% from whatever point it happens to be. So then let's press play.
Cliff is a roofer.
We can F with him
And
all
we're
day.
watching the
Cliff is
control.
highly confused.
Confuse and normal.
All right, so we did a different, we modulated it
We can F
to
with him all day.
open
Cliff is highly
50%
confused.
and then close 50%. Great, and that's what it's doing.
Cliff is a
Now,
roofer.
We can F
you'll
with him
notice
all
a
day.
couple of things. You'll notice that this is not moving, but the control is showing the blue line moving, but the actual position at which the knob is at isn't moving either. It's just the blue line. So that is what's being modulated. So we can move the position whilst the modulation's taking place. And let's go ahead and press play.
Cliff is a roofer.
So it's opening 50%,
Cliff is highly confused.
closing 50%. And if I start to move that control,
We can F with him all day.
Cliff is highly
it just
confused.
opened 50%. Now it's going to try and close 50%. So that modulation is always taking place,
With him all day.
Cliff
as long as it's written in the clip, of course, regardless of where the position of this is at. So even if I'm all the way down here, it's still going to try and go 50% negative of 26, right? So we watch it go to 50% and then it comes down and then it's disappeared. Where's it gone? It's trying to go negative 50 from that point and then it comes back again. Same if we go all the way top. So that's modulation. So we can automate and modulate at the same time. So if we speed this up a little bit and we just get this going a little bit more rapid, and we do that, and then I just go copy that and duplicate it, right? So it's not very tidy, but we've just got it, quickly moving around. And then if I automate it to go from all the way at the bottom to all the way at the top, we can watch the modulation and the automation at the same time. So, and we can hear it.
highly confused. Let's challenge his shattered view of the world.
Right? So that control is being automated and modulated at the same time. Let's jump to the arrangement view, and I'll just quickly show you the example. So now, no longer do we see the red line, which would represent automation. The automation is here now, right? And it just copies over naturally. So if we come back, the modulation is still inside the clip. So it's going to do the same thing, but now the automation shows here. It doesn't show inside of the envelopes. So hopefully that was useful to you guys. I hope you enjoyed all of the tips that I showed you today. Thank you very much again. Subscribe, follow me on Instagram and Facebook. I really appreciate your guys' support. Let's do it.